Conversations with the Mind podcast, where we explore consciousness through conversations with interesting people. Our mission is to engage the collective mind piece by piece to bring greater clarity of mind to our listeners locally and across the planet, and to contribute to broaden the shared experiential knowledge and wisdom of existence. I don't know what's going on, YouTube.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. All right, folks. Welcome back to Conversations with the Mind. I'm your host, as always, Shane Lemaster. This is episode 56 with very special guests, Tyler Allen and Jeremy Hastings. How are you guys?
How you doing, man?
Good. Thanks for having us.
Good. Nice. You guys sound good. So maybe just get a little bit closer when you guys speak into it. But or you guys can stay close the whole time. Let's get friendly in here. So. And let me know too if it gets hot or cold in here. This room tends to get kind of hot, so can do what I can to adjust it. So let's get started. The first question is the same one I ask everybody, and that is, what does Conversations with the Mind mean to you? How does that phrase land with you guys, and how do you guys unpack what that means in your worlds?
Jeremy?
Sounds like an invitation to self-analysis to me. I think one of the things that differentiates people from anything else on this planet is our ability to self-analyze and self-critique our behaviors and our mental patterns and thoughts, and that's intriguing in and of itself. And I think that's what it would imply the show is supposed to be about in some ways, and how we all are kind of connected and wired, and yeah, that's kind of what it sounds like to me.
Isn't that crazy how we are like one of the few, if any, species who can self-analyze, and yet you look around at the landscape of people, and there's so many people not doing the necessary self-analysis to grow or to evolve themselves. You know, so many people are just like, I don't want to deal with that.
It's
that
uncomfortable.
Piece. Yeah, sure.
You know, and I think that's probably one of the biggest issues. If we can admit there's an issue with society, people are afraid to look inside. I love the name of the show. It's a big part of why I feel so comfortable being here. It's a good message. It's definitely worth spreading. As far as conversations with the mind, absolutely. I think that if the populace is not actively trying to seek out inner space as well as outer space in our objective, I think everything else is just vanity.
I've often had the thought that so we're, as a species, we've had a long history of being focused on like the cosmos and the universe and like space travel and aliens and looking outwards at like stars and planets and galaxies to help explain things. But you're right. There's like this. It's a mirrored duality between outer space and inner space.
Absolutely.
And so I've had this thought that if we're so gung-ho about figuring out what's going on out there, that's so far away. It's hard for us to study when all we need to do is kind of turn inside first and study all this first, and then maybe we'll have a better idea just innately of what's going on out there, right? Because it's a direct reflection.
It's as above, so below.
Right.
I mean, it reaches out just as far outwards as it does inwards. I mean, that's why the phrase "know thyself" is one of the most important, and not many people live by that. It's, like we said earlier, it's an uncomfortable thing, but it's the one thing that we must do, I believe at least, to make any real progress.
Yeah, I agree for sure. So I often find too, and both you guys have pathways through the martial arts, and I'd like to hear about both your guys' journeys and how you got started and what got you into it and through and got you to where you were at. But I found, at least for a certain class of martial artists that really take it seriously beyond just the technical fighting aspect, but the spiritual piece, the holistic piece of the martial arts, that we find, amongst all of us, we use the martial arts as a means of self-exploration, self-analysis. Every time we're on the mat in training, we're learning about ourselves through our partners. Every time we get tapped, we learn something new about ourselves. I have this gap in my consciousness, in my jiu-jitsu game, and it's also reflected out in everyday life too. So I find that, like with martial artists like us, we just have this. We have more of an inclination to want to go inside and dig deeper. Do you guys find that too?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it takes a certain kind of person to be willing to make their way through something like a martial art, where when you start out, you are at the very bottom of a very real totem pole. You know, people, especially in jiu-jitsu, you know, you think you have these ideas of how, you know, combat and everything should go, and then you roll with, you know, a female who's 30, 40 pounds lighter than you, and next thing you know, she's actually choking you out or about to break your arm. So I think anybody who can stick around, let their ego be smashed like that and keep coming back for more, is somebody who's into self-progression and learning about themselves and seeing what they're capable of and what they can make out of themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you see that in him too. Like when I was describing that, you were like pointing.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've known Jeremy for over a decade now,
Mm-hmm.
and our friendship. I mean, yeah, we knew each other through high school, and we were actually supposed to fight each other in high school, which is the ironic part of it.
One of those high school yard matches.
Yeah.
Kind of a funny story.
It really just broke down to one of
What
my
happened?
friends got talked shit to the wrong guy. Happened to be Jeremy, and then my friend calls me from the hospital. He brought it all upon himself. I have no blame for Jeremy on this one. And,
Did you put him in the hospital?
I may or may not have.
Allegedly. He allegedly had some involvement.
But
But
fight with the wrong person, that happens.
you know, and
I was a new kid in school. It's always bound to happen every time you change schools. So it just so happened to be one of his friends at the time when I first came here.
yeah. But I mean, we've known each other for a while, and I've actually seen the actual change in Jeremy. Now, I don't have the extensive background that you or Jeremy have in the martial arts, but I've had a unique perspective of seeing my best friend go through it and see the struggles. And of course, we started when we were young. We started together, and you know, it's a good outlet. It's a great outlet. But being at the age that we were, full testosterone, we were in it for good reasons, but also the wrong reasons as well. You know,
I remember those days too, in my early 20s.
Absolutely, yeah.
We were 17, 18 when we started.
Did you guys start with jiu-jitsu? Was that your first?
We jumped into everything kind of all at once, jiu-jitsu and MMA.
We spent every day at the gym.
Yeah.
Pick them up at 8 in the morning, and we wouldn't leave there till like 9 at night. And that was, I mean, and then we just developed
We
that
spent
friendship.
like the entire summer doing that pretty much.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the change, I mean, Jeremy wasn't, you know, he was a good guy, but a little high strung, if you could. And then through the outlet and through the struggles, like I've watched each one. I mean, I've been to almost every single fight, and the individual and how introspective like you've become really shows significance in how the martial arts has affected your life. And the most confusing thing for me, it was confusing because of the age I was, but Jeremy and I had it was our first Muay Thai trainer, our first coach, Muay Thai, and he saw that Jeremy and I were kind of out for blood and just kind of being assholes. And he pulled me aside one day and he goes, you know, a true badass carries himself as a humble man. And that goes for anyone that wants to delve inside of themselves. That makes you a true badass too. And if you go inside and look at what's on the inside of you and what you consist of, it'll make a humble man out of you. At least most of us.
If you're smart about it, it will.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that'll ignore the red flags and the ego. That's a tricky opponent.
It is. I think our biggest opponent in any match, whether we're against ourselves or against somebody else, literally is still against ourselves.
Yeah.
But our opponent is also our biggest teacher too.
Oh, all the opposition in your life. Whatever's got you razzled, whatever's difficult in life, that is your greatest teacher. That's what you should pay attention to. And a lot of people, they need to look at that. But a big thing about, living in, just the society I have. Very small circle. I have not a lot of neighbors and whatnot, but you can see it everywhere you look. That people, I had forgot where I was going with that.
That's okay.
I'm sorry.
Where do you hail from?
Elizabeth.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. My brother went to Elizabeth High School for a little while back in the day.
Oh yeah, not far from that.
Okay.
Maybe like 6 miles or so.
Nice.
So it's nice. But
I'm actually doing a tournament at the end of this month right down there by Parker. The Fuji one?
Oh, that's the field house, Parker Field House.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's down in the same area, right?
Mhm.
As Elizabeth?
It's closer, so it's in Parker, which
Elizabeth.
is just before Elizabeth.
Okay.
Parker is like a slightly more populated version of
Oh, for
Elizabeth.
sure.
Elizabeth is more like what Parker was like 10, 20 years ago.
Is that where you guys grew up?
I didn't grow up there.
No.
I moved here. He's grew up and lived in that area his whole
Yeah.
life, though.
So where did you guys go to high school?
Ponderosa.
Ponderosa, okay. Nice.
That was one of them. For Jeremy, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I went there, and that's where I met him. And then my senior year, I switched to Eagle Academy.
Okay.
Yep. Two fine products of the public school system.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, it was fun growing up out there. I suppose you had to find your own things to do. I mean, you can't just walk to the store or nothing like that.
Well, it makes sense why you guys were in the gym like all the time. You know, it's probably the most fun thing to do in the whole town.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. Yeah.
So I think, like you said, Jeremy, when you stick with something long enough, if you have the discipline and the fortitude to do it, I mean, you end up just naturally going inside and learning about yourself, testing yourself, all these things. Do you think that the people that don't necessarily give it a chance, I mean, how long have you guys been doing this?
I've been
17.
training for 11 years straight, pretty consecutively.
And how many people have we seen come through the door and then never see them again, or train for a couple of years and then they're
More
gone?
than the ones who come in and stick around.
For sure. I think I read a stat one day that said like 1 out of 10,000 that start end up getting a black belt along the journey.
Yeah.
Wow.
I see it being somewhere around there.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty staggering.
I've also heard that people that earn black belts in jiu-jitsu, it's the equivalent of getting like a doctorate or a PhD at
For the time it
university.
takes, yeah.
And the commitment and the dedication and ego smashing
Yeah.
voluntarily that you do. I think that the people that cycle in and out, number one, they don't know what they're missing, and number two, like I think a lot of the population, they have issues with looking on the inside, right? Scary things come up.
Yeah, the whole thing. I mean, it's a hard thing to do, whether you're looking on the inside or doing jiu-jitsu. Like either one, they're difficult. And the funny part is like that's why people do them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's all about the growth. But some people, I think I remember what I was trying to say earlier is people look at discomfort as something that should be avoided, and it absolutely shouldn't be. I mean, you don't want to be stagnant. I mean, you got to go through the difficult moments. Whenever you're uncomfortable, that is your only opportunity to grow. It is uncomfortable to have your ego smashed, whether it be by jiu-jitsu or 5 grams of psilocybin.
Mm-hmm.
It's uncomfortable, and it should be. That's where growth is. If you're always concerned about being comfortable your whole life, you're just a stagnant pond.
Mm-hmm.
And what are you going to contribute? I mean, like, no offense to the people, you know, I've been guilty myself, but you got to strive for the discomfort in life if you want to grow.
And there's an extreme to that too, where you can get, it can become an addiction where you can seek out drama all the time, or too much discomfort, right? I mean, you don't want that to be your focus, such that you find yourself, committing crimes to seek to go to jail and things like that, right?
Yeah, well, the general discomforts that we have in life.
Sure.
You know, people, they look at, I had this breakup. This woman doesn't want to be with me. What's wrong with me? Well, that's your opportunity. You sense that you're uncomfortable. It's your opportunity to look at the whole situation as a whole. Being happy and looking at a situation and being sad and looking at a situation is going to give you 2 different perspectives, depending on how long you're going to think about it. But both of those are great for analyzing whatever you're going through. You're going to need multiple perspectives to pursue whatever you're after, or trying to figure out what position you're in. And that's where knowing thyself is. You have to analyze it in each state of mind that you're in. Now, don't go out and causing, purposeful discomfort. That, I'm sure there's some medical names for that. I don't even know if that word fits, like sadomasochism
for
and
sure.
stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Psychosis. But, and then it comes to people starting drama to create discomfort. That's what they're doing. They're being an antagonist, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
They're not exactly relishing in the discomfort of themselves, but of the discomfort they cause for other people. That's why they spread and create the drama.
Mm-hmm.
So where it originates is definitely important, but what's most important is if you're in an uncomfortable position in life, which we all find ourselves in inevitably, that you hone in on that, you accept it for what it is, and you work through it until it's over. That's the only way you're going to grow.
And what it is, way down at the core is it's a teacher. You know, it's a teacher. Everything that happens to you, good or bad, you know, good or bad is just a label.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a choice you make
Mm-hmm.
too, and but it's a teacher whether you like it or not. Whether you choose to learn from it, that's also a choice.
Yeah.
And you need to pay attention to that too. But yeah, something that really helps me, and well, I'll just throw it out there: cannabis, for sure. You know, helps with the self-analysis. Meditation, for me, helps.
Absolutely.
Things like, you know, jiu-jitsu for sure, but other repetitive exercise, running. You know, I can get in that self-analysis mode. What are some other things that you guys do on your daily or weekly basis to help get into that space? Because, you know, there's going to be other people listening to this too, right? And they're gonna be like, I want that, but I just don't know how to get started. So what are some things that we can throw out there for ideas for people?
In terms of just opening up that kind of state of mind of
yeah, like how else in your daily life do you learn things about yourself? How do you discover? How do you analyze your behaviors, your thoughts? Do you use formal tools like meditation, things like that?
You know, I think like you'd said with cannabis, I think cannabis unintentionally helps people look within and self-analyze and sometimes even overthink things. So partaking in that helps with that. I think just anywhere in life you find yourself, I mean, it can just be your work. You know, you find you have a problem at work, you have to figure out a way to solve it and get around it. You know, and then what's left afterwards is how that worked out and what you learned from it. You know, so I think lessons are always there to be learned. It's just a matter of if you pay attention to them, you know?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I like what you said, you're at work and you come across a problem. I mean, that's the best time for your self-reflection, is when that problem arises again.
Yeah, challenge. Like you said,
absolutely.
challenge arises.
I mean, that's technically your opposition. In jiu-jitsu, you face a lot of opposition in life. I mean, the same thing. But what he says is, you know, like one of the examples, like the first example you mentioned was at work, which is interesting to me because it shows that you're self-analyzing while you're, you know, doing your daily task for your career, which shows to me that like you can find happiness or introspection at any given moment that you want. You just have to be willing to pay attention to it. A lot of people don't do it because there's a lot of distractions around. You know, it's a lot easier to go, let's just turn on TV, think about what they're telling me to think about. For me personally, like I do meditate, I do partake in cannabis. That's why I think I lost my original train of thought earlier. But
the other unintentional effects of cannabis.
Yeah, there's quite a list of effects. But for me personally, I overanalyze all the time, all the freaking time, to the point where like, you know, I tend to like start to not get shit done. I'm like, oh shit.
So yeah, analysis by paralysis. Or
paralysis by analysis. Yeah, for sure. Thanks for telling me. Yeah, I'm gonna use that now. But I mean, really, I kind of view myself as like a sensitive individual, not like emotional and stuff. Yeah, I cried at Endgame, but I'm not emotional. All right, that much. But like I see myself as like a highly sensitive individual when it comes to I want to say consciousness. I don't think my brain like shuts it down as much or reduces it as much as, I don't want to say as maybe like normal people, but
so you think just in general the flow of your consciousness seems to be a little more open?
Yeah.
Because I mean, you're right, like society certainly puts constraints on consciousness, either through the laws that they're telling us, you know, you can't explore your consciousness using these molecules, right? That's so stupid. So they're putting limitations on how we can explore it. Religion does this.
Yes, that's very good that we at least have that. You know,
they push a lot of distractions at us to try to keep us away from those things.
Or like mind control. Like here, look, pay attention to this.
Freaking psyops. Yeah, don't watch the news, folks.
Or hey, don't go into your own mind either. Like pay attention to this news story.
Yeah. Hey, check it out.
Fear.
Why look inside yourself when you could look at Kim Kardashian's butt? Yeah. That's, you know, a lot of distractions, and it's built that way. If we start to, you know, actually look inside of ourselves, and explore that area, and we'll start to see that my neighbor's not really an asshole. He's going through something that I may have went through a couple years ago, or something that I might go through in the future. If we start paying attention to ourselves and really analyzing things for what they are and not what we perceive this place to be, because we tend to make enemies out of people that we don't know just due to not knowing ourselves. Knowing yourself is the best way to know others. Honestly, it's the only way to know others. You should. Honestly, I'm a firm believer. If you don't know yourself, you shouldn't be trying to implement yourself into somebody else's life, no matter what position that is. If it's a friend giving advice, or if it's a girlfriend boyfriend situation. If you don't know yourself, be cautious of what you say and do for other people, because you may be confused as to what the intentions are. Not really sure where exactly I'm going with that, but I'm just trying to iterate that knowing yourself is going to be the best formula for getting along with everybody outside.
Sure. So that self-analysis is crucial no matter how you get it done, right? Cannabis, meditation, exercise, your work, right? As long as you're doing that analysis in your life, you're probably making progress.
Absolutely.
Right? So I'm huge into this idea about human potential, human growth. I have a master's degree in sport and performance psychology, so I do the sports psychology like in my private practice. And so optimization of the mind through, the power of the mind. We have this great mental tool up here that we can, or maybe it's probably not even up here. It's like out here.
Yeah.
But we have this amazing tool at our disposal, right? Self-analysis, and then our ability to intentionally adapt and make progress, right? I think my primary interest in school right now is going to be, I'm going to want to be doing a dissertation on psychedelic-assisted therapies, but in the future, like what got me into even wanting to do psychedelic research in the first place is wanting to explore microdosing's effects on athletic performance, because I personally use microdosing in training and in competition at times, and subjectively I experience things like enhanced balance, enhanced somatic and sensory things, time dilation, so I feel like I'm moving faster.
Increased awareness.
Better cardio, right? Or it seems like it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is fascinating to me, like that we can use these almost as like a technology or another tool, not only for self-analysis, but for like fine-tuning our cognitive processes. And in turn, it will, enhance our physical abilities as well. You guys,
Wholeheartedly believe in that.
Yeah.
Absolutely, 100%. There's no doubt. I've had my own, subjective experiences with them. They can do a lot for you if you use them in a responsible manner. They really can. I do know that Jeremy, he's on the same page with you. Microdoses and does training and whatnot.
Yeah, and I told you privately, like I microdosed before our own match that we had.
Me too.
Yeah.
We just happen to be on different molecules then.
Yeah.
It's like a battle of the molecule.
Right. And I had practice up until that point for about a month or two, once a week, once or twice a week doing a microdose, and yeah, I felt incredible. Like, didn't know how to quite put it, but I felt like I was definitely getting like better training in when I was doing it. So I felt like it was like opening up my creativity, like how I saw things and how I was like aware of things happening, like while training and rolling in positions and transitions. And yeah, I see why there's a lot of buzz about the experimenting with microdosing now, because so far, in my own perspective, it's looked promising.
Well, there's actual research on that piece with the creative problem solving, and that's why Silicon Valley loves it,
Yeah.
for computers and apps and stuff, because people are able to solve these complex problems, mathematics, and
They get past their own writer's block with it.
yeah, totally.
Oh, 100% more.
You find
creative.
flow states all the time.
Oh, it's a lot easier getting to a flow state, I'd say, if you're microdosing. So
For sure.
I typically just do like 0.1 to 0.5 grams, make a tea out of it, sit there and read a book or something like that. I'll do that. I'll try to do it twice a week, but it usually ends up being about Sundays.
So both mushrooms, though, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So last year, so I haven't been to school in 8 years, and I just started up college last fall, and I wasn't particularly good at school, and so I was a little nervous for it. But first class up was what I did the worst in high school, and I was English, and I was like, great. And we had to write a paper. Eventually, I knew I was going to come to this. We had to write a big final paper and whatnot. And I chose the psychedelic experience, or Renaissance and psychedelic science today versus the psychedelic era, 1960s. And then I try to compare the two, and then make an argument for why these should be decriminalized, at least in therapy sessions or psychopharmacology, or at least for people to study them on a more wide basis. And I wrote the paper while microdosing, and
puts a nice little spin on it. Did you reveal that to the teacher?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, and she was with it.
She's hip to it. Okay.
Oh yeah. I walked into that class. She had like a green military jacket on, tie-dye bandana, and dreadlocks. And I just went,
nice.
Fuck yeah. So that helped in my favor a bit. But I'll tell you, right in the paper while microdosing, it was really mind-opening. I was coming to conclusions and thoughts that I don't think I would have normally come up with. So it definitely helps out with the creativeness on it, for sure. And I think it also helps you retain whatever activity that you're doing while you're microdosing. I think that it helps you maintain that muscle memory, or that thought pattern, or that route that your brain takes to achieve that goal. I think that it stays with you a little bit deeper. It's a little bit more ingrained when you do something like that. I mean,
that makes a lot of sense if you believe in the stoned ape theory too.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a reason for that. Yeah.
I mean,
so for the listeners out there who don't know what that is, Terrence McKenna came up with this idea of the stoned ape theory, where as apes descended from the trees and went into the grasslands in search of more food, they found this fungus growing on these cow patties and decided to eat it, and it was psychoactive and spurred brain cell growth and the whole prefrontal cortex, and that's how he hypothesized that we eventually evolved into who we are. And actually, the studies on psilocybin are showing stuff around neurogenesis and regrowth of brain cells and stuff, and speeding that up, and maybe even some possible applications in the future for things like Alzheimer's and dementia, some of those degenerative diseases of the brain. So that's really cool. And I met these folks out in Detroit once, so you're going to love this. And they were midwives, so they help people birth kids. And man, the thunder is really cool.
Yeah.
I hope that shows
This
up on
is
the
great.
podcast. But they help these people have babies at home, and they're very spiritual about it and traditional from the African American communities, and they put just a little bit of psilocybin in the baby's mouth, like right as it comes out.
Get out.
Yeah, right as it comes out, they put a little bit of psilocybin in the baby's mouth because it's non-toxic, and their thinking is that it's going to spark neurogenesis at an incredible rate right from the onset. It's going to start opening up the brain's ability to make more connections over the entire lifespan, and sort of just help make this super baby with psilocybin.
Maybe. Maybe.
Who knows?
Well, I mean, I can see the theory behind it, and I'm not necessarily against it, though. I'm not married now, but my future wife probably, I don't know what she would think about that. It's got to take a very special individual to allow someone to put psilocybin in their newborn baby's mouth. But, I mean, it's like after you build an engine, I mean, you're going to fire it up.
I feel like we should experiment with rats with these types of things before we jump into the
we actually
experimenting on our own child that's got its whole life ahead of it. I just feel like when you're born already, your entire brain is already in a constant state of absorption and growth. Like it's constantly developing new. I mean, I'm sure that it could have benefits or things like that with brain development. But I feel like that early on, I don't even know if that's necessary, because I feel like babies are already basically constantly tripping.
Yeah.
I think everything to them
that is an argument.
new.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
They did test it out on rats. I think it was California University. There was a study last year that actually showed that it was psilocybin, LSD, and DMT all caused neurogenesis and increased your neuroplasticity. So I mean, like, it's proven in rats for sure.
But not on infant rats.
I was gonna say, yeah, not on infant
to show
rats.
that there is a difference between an adult rat who
Right.
had the controlled
Yeah.
substance versus one that.
That's
That's really
scary
interesting. I
shit.
haven't even heard about comparison trials between baby rats and adult rats for anything.
Yeah,
ever.
oh,
I mean,
I'm-
that's just an interesting aspect.
It's gotta be real tough, I would assume. I mean, the rats, they develop so quickly. It's gotta be such a really, I mean, you need a slower growing animal. I mean, humans have the longest development stage of any animal on the planet. I don't know if we can have any other animal and be that close on to what it actually does for your baby. Now, I mean, maybe a long-term trial would have to take place, but that's 20 years from
Sure.
now, if, you know.
Yeah, these folks, I mean, they didn't just like willy-nilly came across it, but they were pulling off of lineages back from their African roots when, you know, their ancestors would do some of these cultural practices. And I think, you know, it's been in our human history forever. You know,
since the dawn.
Yeah, I think I saw a map once of like how humans have migrated across land ever since the beginning of humanity, and then also a map of how cannabis has migrated across the land, and it follows the same exact path.
Now,
So like cannabis and humans like follow the same, you know, and
Well,
mushrooms too, you know,
yeah.
because we have mutually beneficial symbiotic relationships with these plants,
Mhm.
and they know that, the plants know that.
Oh, they absolutely do.
And they give us like these gifts in order for us to like, hey, we need to stay alive. We need these people to like plant us around and make us
Well, just deal
continue.
with them. Yeah, we just need to pick the mushroom in order to plant
Sure.
it somewhere else. And spores are tiny.
Mhm.
But that was even, you know, I think it was probably the humans who came through and brought the seeds with them, with the cannabis.
Oh, yeah.
I'm thinking it's got to be the humans first, but that would be interesting if the cannabis laid out a map for us. It goes, hey,
Oh no, I
go over
definitely
here.
think the humans brought it along with them.
Oh, yeah.
But because the cannabis, you know, provides so much good. You know?
Oh,
It's
it
in
really
almost
does.
every culture across the planet,
Mhm.
across history. You know.
There's a book called How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan, and he has an interview. Have you read it?
I have it on my bookshelf.
Oh,
yeah.
nice. Remember that? Recall the interview with Paul Stamets?
Paul Stamets, yeah.
Statements. And he was talking about where you find these psychedelic mushrooms at, and they're often growing in disturbed dirt where humans have a lot of involvement.
Hmm.
And it's like they're almost seeking us out, going, "Hey, fucking eat me!" Like an old school Mario movie from the '90s. Fungus alive.
Right. Well, I actually heard that video game Mario Brothers might have been partially inspired by psilocybin or Amanita muscaria. Like the
Oh,
red
yeah,
mushrooms in there
because
are
the
the
level-
Amanita
How
muscaria.
else do you write
Growing
code
and
without
shrinking,
going crazy?
yeah.
Growing, shrinking, going down into underworlds, and like battling your shadow self, and, you know, all those things. It's a metaphor for
Fighting giant turtles that breathe fire. You gotta be
Yeah.
tripping for that.
True.
Oh, yes, yeah. How can you think of that without some psychedelic
Yeah.
experience? Absolutely, on board with that one.
But I've also heard that, you know, the mushroom spores can survive in space, so they can survive on like asteroids and things like
Okay.
that, and that's probably how they're like transplanted from planet to planet and
Panspermia.
right. But you know, the mushroom has kind of it's an intelligent thing, you know, and it's the largest living thing on the planet. The mycelial bed in the Appalachian Mountains is like it runs for like hundreds of miles. Just this one giant living
It's like I think it was the last they measured is like 2.4, but it weighs like millions of pounds. 2.4 miles.
Okay.
No, I'm with you. That's actually what I specialize in
Oh,
at
nice.
work. Is I inject mycelium into the ground to force these trees to cooperate with each other instead of.
Yeah, they're communication networks, right?
Oh,
for the tree.
absolutely.
And that's how the trees like send nutrients to each other.
And the fungus governs it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's what I specialize in is the application of ectomycorrhizal fungi. There's two types of funguses. So there's ectomycorrhizal and there's endo. So endo is going to be like parasitic, kind of negative. When I think of endo, I think of like venom, symbiote type thing, you know. But the ecto, it's the stuff that I apply. It's about like 32 different types of spores. And then it'll form a symbiotic relationship with all of your feeder roots, and it'll actually grow your feeder root system 10 to 100 times the original surface area.
Wow.
And it will span out and grow onto other roots from other species of tree and whatnot, and essentially govern them. It'll be like, hey, you need some iron. well, all right, I'll go out and find some iron, and this mycelium is covered in these enzymes that'll digest hard to digest minerals so that trees can't do themselves, and it'll translocate that nutrients to the tree, provided the tree gives it some carbon-based sugar. So you have this organism in there that is governing the forests. Now, there are exceptions. There are plants that hijack the nutrients, and there's some trees out there, I think it's a special kind of oak that will actually send toxic chemicals through the fungus. But they use it, they call it the wood wide web. The trees are able to send or generate, send, and receive electrical signals at 1/3 inch per second, and they send that as like a fiber optic
Electrical signal.
Electrical.
So, and then it turns into electrochemical signal, right? Because it's just like our brains.
Neuron. Yeah,
exactly.
It's sending out neurotransmitters.
Yeah, so we have these electrical signalings, and then it tells the synapse, hey, you need to release more of this neurotransmitter in order to get this effect. Same thing's going on with the mycelium is that they're giving instructions.
Oh yeah.
So is there a way to like learn how to program things into mycelium to get certain effects in an environment? Like can you apply the same thing you're talking about with trees to like standard flower garden or vegetable garden and help help more symbiosis between those kind of plants too?
You can for sure. My knowledge on that for flowers or fruiting bodies and stuff like that, I'm not particularly aware of. The stuff that I deal with, they say don't use it on plant food, but we apply it to flowers and stuff like that, and absolutely they take off. It's really it's cool to see. It's one of the reasons why I keep doing the job, is to come back next year and see this person's flowers, see this person's trees, the shrubs, everything. And there was about 3 years of my career where I wasn't applying this stuff, and then we picked it up after about the 3rd year, and ever since that, the properties that we take care of have just exploded. And essentially what we're doing is what humans should be doing with society. We're going back to the roots of how this stuff actually grows. We're going back to nature. We're going back to the natural way of things, and that is significantly increasing the health of these plants. Now, every tree that you have in your yard, or every tree you see on the roadside, it doesn't particularly belong there. They don't belong there. They belong in a forest with all their buddies, all their same species and other species, plant life, bugs. They belong in a big community.
Now, is that because they have a social aspect to?
Absolutely.
Okay, because I've read reports from you might have heard of this too, from the redwood forest, of how the redwoods have been releasing neurochemicals into the air, into the atmosphere, that only have receptor sites within the human brain. They don't have receptor sites in any other animal or plant species, and so that the trees are actually trying to communicate. And this is their way of communication. We're just not picking up on that because they're not using language.
Yeah.
But the neurotransmitters are making connections in people's brains, and we don't know what the message is, but
They're happening.
yeah, but that these things are communicating, right? And they can communicate with each other because they're social.
Oh.
We don't think of trees as social things.
No, they look like a stick in the mud.
Right.
Watered, it grows, who cares? But
all you have to do is look at the lining of treetops and see how they'll grow around each other and not into each other and stuff. They can talk. They talk to each other at least. They send out signals when they're in pain to let other the smell of freshly cut grass is basically the screams of dead grass that you're smelling. They're trying to warn the grass nearby.
It's probably not good.
No, you can't do anything about this, but we're getting chopped up over here.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're on different wavelengths, but there's way too many similarities between people and plants to ignore them. It's kind of cool to learn about.
We've co-evolved with one another, and we even have a segment of tree DNA within our own.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So
I wonder if they have a segment of ours in them.
I bet. I mean, they're written out of the same stuff. Same
There's
420
above, so there's
protein.
below, right? I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. Treetop root system. I mean, you can see that metaphor. I mean, absolutely everywhere. But yeah, they communicate with the pheromones. Pheromones, electrical signals, and then the root tips, they actually can click at 220 hertz and let other root tips know where a nutrient-rich segment is in the soil. So, I mean, they communicate in 3 different ways. Even mother trees can recognize and care for their own offspring. So, I mean, these are bioorganisms who are conscious. Maybe not in the way that you see, you and I, as conscious, but these things are wholeheartedly conscious. That neurotransmitter, or that pheromone you're talking about from the redwoods, trees have abilities to call in specific animals and insects with those pheromones. they can call in wasps, they can call in ants. Deer, they kind of fuck up trees here and there. They rub their antlers on them, they'll eat a little bit too much and whatnot. But a deer or a tree can sense when it's been damaged by the environment versus if it's been damaged by a herbivore. So when a herbivore takes a bite out of it, it'll leave behind saliva. And the tree picks up on that saliva and releases 2 pheromones. One that says, hey guys, we have a quote-unquote predator in the area, but bump up your growth hormone. These, when I say predators, it's a herbivore to a tree, absolutely. It's like, could be a mountain lion, and they want them around to the extent that they'll eat their seeds and spread their offspring further. I mean, the trees actually want the deer around. But the interesting part, I believe I read this in, it's called The Hidden Life of Trees. If the deer consume too much or cause too much damage, the tree has the ability to call in a carnivore.
Really?
Fucking mountain lion. And scare off the deer or just, obliterate a couple. And that, to me, the reason why I found myself in the world and speech of consciousness and going into my mind and whatnot was because of the tree industry.
I was going to say, like, you had to have gotten really interested in this topic because of what you had found through, what you had learned about trees. And that's oftentimes how we come to this this journey or this exploration of, like, the ethereal, right? The stuff we can't see. Is usually because we've learned something about our physical world that we're like, this is really interesting. This doesn't make any sense. I need to figure out. Right, I got to figure this thing out. And then we find like, oh, there's this whole other realm that we can connect it to, right? And then it goes real deep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the order it went, it was essentially the easiest way I can break it down. Is like, I started applying a fungus. I saw that the fungus made these trees cooperate with each other instead of compete against one another. And then I have a friend, Jeremy here, who's been trying to get me to eat psilocybin for about a decade. And I didn't until I started noticing what that fungus did for the trees. And that's what it does. That's what, other funguses like psilocybin containing mushrooms do for people.
Yeah, so Jeremy, how did you get into, how did you find your path to psilocybin?
Not for any kind of in-depth type of purpose to me. It was just the idea of seeing something visually that I knew wasn't actually happening just intrigued me for some reason. The idea of like colors changing and patterns and everything moving just for some reason just sounded fun. Sounded like something different. I don't know. So I really wanted to try just for that aspect, just kind of experience. I feel like that's part of what human life is all about, is the experiences that we can have and learn from,
self-experiments.
Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to try it for that aspect. Did it one time a long time ago, had an absolute blast, had a lot of those kind of like self analytical conversations, like really thought about my life, where I was going, what I wanted to do, and it was all positive. Like I had the time of my life on it, and I enjoyed it, but didn't want to make it like, oh, I want to do this every weekend. It was like, okay, I got a really good experience out of this. Let's not like, ruin our entire or change our entire life, but like learn from it,
Right, because you can get addicted to the pretty colors and the insights.
I think like anybody can get addicted to anything. I think balance is crucial for everything in life. But I wanted to do it again. I wanted to wait for like the right time, and a couple years or a few years or so went by, and he came around on it, and then we tried it over at his place, and I think he obviously took to it, and it's a cool tool to experiment with from time to time. If you're wanting some self-realizations or some change, or you just want to get a little weird for a while, it's a lot of fun.
It's definitely a tool. Definitely a tool.
It's a good way to switch it up, literally.
Yeah.
So we're finding in the research too, where all these psychedelics are working on the default mode network in your brain, which is like the automatic behaviors and the automatic thoughts that you've programmed into yourself. That's your default mode, and that these psychedelics go in there and they
shake
disrupt it for a minute, and it's
shake
like
up the snow globe.
Right, and then they're like, okay, now's your chance to like realign just the way that you want it. So take advantage of this, right? That's why we don't suggest doing it like every single day. You can't do a psychedelic every day. The tolerance doubles literally every day. There's a reason for that. That's why they're non-addictive physically, except for ketamine.
They're
But,
anti-addictive.
right.
Most of
yeah,
them, yeah.
Most of them really help people come out of addiction. But the novelty, I mean, like you can get addicted to the pretty lights and get addicted to the good times, right? And how it connects you socially, and that's the part that people just need to
That's
get
what they
easy
look
on.
at the surface. You know,
Right.
It goes way deeper than that. I think that's where it's actually like where it becomes a tool and useful for changing people's lives and who they are. Sometimes even for the better. You know.
Yeah, we got to give it time to unpack it. So
Yeah.
Oh,
in between.
There's wholeheartedly a reintegration period.
Sure.
I learned that the hard way.
Well, so like we were talking about earlier, like, you know, a lesson doesn't mean anything if you don't learn from it, you know. So I think it's a good time to take those things and try to absorb and process. So everyone who's tripped knows, like, you go through something when you trip, right? Like, you have some point in the experience, you have a lot of thoughts about yourself and what's going on in your life, and it really makes you look at yourself from a whole different perspective than you had before the trip, you know. So
I think that's a good place for us to segue to a quick commercial break. So we'll be right back with segment 2, Conversation with the Mind. Hold tight.
Alright, let's help you camera. That shit is wicked. That was not a fun time.
All right, folks, we're back for segment 2, Conversations with the Mind. So, yeah, at the break we were talking about salvia a little bit. You guys want to share your experience with that? Because the only time I tried it, I think I was in a hotel room with a bunch of high school people, and we were just like trying to inhale and hold it as long as possible. I think I almost blacked out and hit my head on a dresser, and then I was like, that was lame. I'm not doing that anymore. But some people like swear by it. So
same thing like I was saying earlier with what I had tried mushrooms for. It was, you know, purely for like the experience and just, hey, this is for some reason that for a short period of time, or actually just up until within the last 10 years, salvia was not illegal in Colorado. Like, you could go into like a tobacco shop and buy salvia.
is it now? Is it?
It is for about 10 years now ish has been made illegal. You can no longer go and buy it.
Really?
Which I didn't understand how it was legal at the time to begin with, considering all the other things that were illegal.
Oh,
Somehow
right.
salvia was
Slipped through the cracks.
so I had
Well,
somebody
it made you not want to ever do psychedelics.
because they like, no, you do this one time, you're not going to do it
Yeah,
again. They weren't worried about it.
No.
So I had someone get it for me, took it to his house. We had some people over. We tried it, and yeah, there is just not like a really good way to explain how it feels, but it's like I remember leaving his house, like just didn't even turn on any music, just sat there in silence, just thought about what I just experienced the whole way home. Just puts you in a really weird place, like in a completely different sense of reality, and there's like, you're aware that it's completely out of whack, but there's no changing it. It lasts for like about 5 minutes or so.
Is it introspective? Like, does it make you start self-analyzing like the other psychedelics?
It's too rapid.
No,
It's too rapid.
So it's just happening, and you're aware that it's happening, but there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, you're just like suddenly in like a different type of dimension where the laws of physics and everything is just completely different, and yeah, you feel the effects of gravity a lot when you're on it too. Like, you get like, if you're sitting down, like if you were to be sitting down on like a beanbag or something, you would hit it, and then once they hit it, like, you find yourself like sunk all the way back down into it.
I think that's probably why I almost fell over.
Oh yeah,
Gravity was all messed up for me.
it goes. Yeah, your equilibrium just gets.
It's like when
thrown
you're
around.
like, you know, that spinning ride at the carnival where like you're stuck to the wall.
Yeah, the Gravitron.
Yeah, it's like being on the Gravitron, but there's no Gravitron.
Oh man.
Yeah, I don't know. It's really hard to explain if you haven't done just like some of the other psychedelics out there. But I remember just feeling like everything around me was like pages in a book. Like, everything was flat and one-dimensional. I felt like a page in a book somehow. It was just the weirdest thing.
Whose book? I wonder.
Yeah. Questions
deep.
I don't know if I want the answer to.
Right. Oh, am I just some page in some guy's book?
Well, the book I was reading that night
Sure.
was me looking over at Jeremy. We were doing this at the time at my parents' house. We're smoking this salvia at my parents' house. I look over at Jeremy, and my parents, my family, they all hunt and they have trophies and whatnot on the wall. And Jeremy, he wandered off.
It's an
shortly after.
interesting place, an interesting setting to trip anything in, is with heads on the wall.
Yeah, that's not really recommended. But I come upstairs. Jeremy wandered off shortly after he took a hit. And I come upstairs and I see Jeremy, and he's just face to face talking to this white-tailed deer on the wall. Not really audible either, but
just like mumbling. Nice.
It was, yeah. I was like, man, you talking to the deer? You're like, what? No, it wasn't. Uh-uh.
Other dimensions, man. Maybe he was talking to him.
It's straight up. Maybe the spirit of the deer. I can't. After experimenting with that stuff, I don't discount really anything.
Right.
So that was a real deer.
Have you guys experienced DMT?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So you guys know that you can literally see other dimensions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Within the same occupying space.
If you have the blast through.
Right.
Yeah.
So salvia might be just another lens that is showing us like, hey, this place actually exists where gravity is like 100 times what it feels like here, but it's happening right here, and maybe you guys did go to another place.
Yeah.
Your consciousness.
I heard that two-dimensional visions consistently. I mean, I
That seems to
shouldn't
be a
say.
common theme I've heard too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Two-dimensional.
I had a buddy who did it, and he's like, dude, I was in Mario.
Yeah, like Paper Mario. That's what like
Paper
everything was
Mario.
like. Everything felt like a piece of paper somehow.
Yeah. It was.
I tell you, yeah, dude, I've been on a high-dose ketamine experience once where everything I looked around at looked like it was made out of Legos.
Ooh.
Yeah. Like, even I looked at my wife, I'm like, you're made out of Legos. And the Legos were like undulating and moving, but you could see every little brick. It was nutty. And then I looked it up online, and I guess a lot of people have that similar visual experience. It's like Legoland.
Mm-hmm.
So these dimensions, you know, it's possible that they exist. I don't believe that our consciousness is localized in our brain.
Oh, I don't either.
I believe that the brain is more like an organ or a tuning fork. It's a tool in and of itself. That kind of consciousness is like out here a little bit.
You could argue that your brain, what you're experiencing now, is just one of many of itself in all the parallel universes that are out there.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it's one possibility happening. In another world, like I just knocked over that's water, right?
Oh, I knocked over the camera by hitting the cable.
Yeah.
This other world is very chaotic.
But it's all happening simultaneously.
Yeah.
That's the part that, yeah, there's a lot that's hard for us to wrap our heads around. Even the tree stuff you were talking about earlier, like, if you go and tell the average person on the street that the trees are communicating with animals and other trees and human beings on a daily basis, most of them would think you're nuts.
Oh, absolutely.
But the science tells us that, you know, and there's so much that we don't know about consciousness and about living things. You know, I'm a believer that, you know, plants have a consciousness or a spirit or whatever.
So
Yeah,
if that's
Gaia.
the case too, does that mean vegetarians aren't really any more moral than us?
Oh, absolutely. I can pretty much confirm that, man.
Yeah, totally.
They register pain.
Yeah,
I mean, they
absolutely.
do.
And they're it's plant murder.
Well, I
It'd
mean,
be a great band name, Plant Murder.
they're just choosing the lesser of the two evils, you know, because in this existence, it's sad but true, but something has to die for something else to live. That's just the way it operates.
Is it the lesser of two, though? Because you got to kill how many plants to make a meal for you? And you got to kill like one animal spirit that could feed a family for 6 months.
Yeah,
Right?
Yeah, true, but
It's one soul versus like millions of souls that I just killed when I cut the grass.
it just feels better eating a plant, I guess. You
Yeah, I
don't feel
guess.
as bad because it doesn't have eyeballs looking back at you.
Yeah, and it doesn't scream at you.
I
that you
mean,
can
yeah,
hear.
that you can hear. Yeah. Ooh.
Cows are pretty affectionate animals too. If you actually have to like
Yeah.
kill your own cows, I couldn't imagine having to kill something that like looks at me and thinks it's like my friend. I would feel like I betrayed it.
Mm.
I love a good hamburger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
When I was
just can't
growing
do
up, my grandma raised a cow, and its name was T-Bone. And I remember as a kid, it was like it roamed her property for years, man. Just see T-Bone out in the field, and then one day it just wasn't there, and we had steaks.
for a long time.
Yeah.
Took you a while to connect the dots.
It
or-
did, yeah. Like I didn't get it for a while. I didn't make the connection, but I was so far removed from it that it wasn't sad anymore. You
Right.
know?
Probably the easiest way for that to happen.
Sure. No, but it's interesting. I don't think consciousness is localized. I don't think it's one thing. You know, we can never put our finger on it because every time we seem to put our finger on it, we're shown something totally new and different, whether it's through psychedelics or meditation or victory on the mat. Like, congratulations last night, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
And that was in Philadelphia?
Seattle.
Seattle.
Yeah,
Okay.
I did Philly a few weeks back. Lost that one. That was a title shot. Kind of got hometowned. But went out and did this one in Seattle and won that.
Yeah, it was a triangle armbar combo, right?
Yeah, locked in the triangle, and then about 3 minutes in, finished it with the straight arm lock off of it. Guy didn't want to tap. Pretty sure he made me kind of break his arm because I felt it pop like a bunch of times.
Yep. That's happened to me a couple times.
And then he tried to really just nonchalantly say, okay, I think you got it, or okay, good. Couldn't hear exactly what he said. Verbally said something. I knew I was breaking his arm, so I just let go, and yeah, he verbally tapped. Then he tried to do it in like the most nonchalant way, which is just crazy because like he did it like
you could see the ego.
There was like 2 seconds pause between me feeling his arm pop multiple times all at once, and then him just saying,
"All right,
yeah,
good."
okay, yeah."
That's ego,
Such
right
ego.
in your face.
Could you classify ego as a drug?
Oh yeah, man. Most people are addicted to this thing that they call whatever your name is. You know, this concept that I call Shane is not. You know, I get so addicted to it every day that I wake up in this same body. You know.
Yeah.
But that's great. I've had to do that before in competition too. I'm like, dude, you gotta freaking tap, and then I just keep going here, pop, 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 and then still no tap. But afterwards, I don't know about you, but I didn't get into the martial arts to hurt people.
Right.
And I know that he signed up to do this, but I still feel bad. Like,
Right, you're a human being.
Yeah, like injuring someone,
Yeah,
you know?
I feel the same way. I didn't have any animosity towards the guy, so like I went up to him afterwards and asked him how his arm was doing. He amazingly said it felt fine. So I don't know how he is today. But I hit that moment though. Like I felt the arm lock fully out, and I was like, okay, if I go any harder, I'm probably gonna break his arm. But he's gonna make me do it, so I'm gonna do it. Like I had this kind of like conversation with myself, like, okay, I had to mentally commit to breaking this man's arm because I had it fully locked out, and I started applying pressure. It started popping, still nothing, and then like maybe a second after that, it feels a lot longer than the moment. It was probably about a second or something, and he was like, he just verbally said something. I honestly couldn't have been pulling any harder. Like from the angle that I had, I was going as hard as I could, and I already felt it pop. I just heard him say something. I assumed it was a tap, and I let go. And yeah, he wasn't contesting it. He wanted out. But, yeah, I don't know how he didn't show more pain in that moment because I literally was arm barring as hard as I fucking could.
That is one of those conversations with the mind that is so freaking intense, and the fact that you had the wherewithal to stop at the point of full extension and just be like, I have a choice here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like if you're a white belt, you don't think about the choice, you just rip it, right? Yeah. But as a brown belt, you know, we learn I know how far this guy's arm will bend, and I have a choice to do something about it.
Right.
You know, that's another thing that we develop in the martial arts. You stick with it long enough, you learn how to avoid fights. You learn how to avoid conflict, you know, if you can talk your way out of it.
Absolutely.
or literally, you could hold someone in a position with jiu-jitsu and not do any damage to them and calm them down, you know, until the police get there or whatever, right? It's not meant to hurt anybody necessarily,
Right.
but when it happens, you know, we're humans, we feel it.
Yeah.
That conversation's
okay.
crazy.
Yeah, I was glad he was okay though. I did check on him afterwards. He's seemed fine, so.
Yeah. Well, congrats.
Thank you.
And that gi that you wore last night is pretty cool too. The tie dye.
Yeah. It was just a all white lucky gi that I had. I actually lost the top to it 2 years ago, so I bought another one, or they sent me another one, and then just randomly one of the GMs at our Denver location, I found it and assumed that it was a A3 lucky gi. Who's could it be? It's probably Jeremy because that's all he fucking wears. And I was like, yeah, I still have the pantsuit and everything, so now I have 2 sets of this all-white travel gi, so I decided to have a little fun with one of them, tie-dye it.
Nice.
Came out pretty cool, I think. Decided to wear it for the Seattle card and won, so.
So what is it about the lucky gi?
So I like Lucky because right now, like the cool guy brand of gi is like the shoulder roll, and like there's some other like ones that have a pretty good following, like Control Industries, handful of other ones that are like
I like
that.
to wear War Tribe the most.
War Tribe's getting pretty big, yeah. But when I first started about 11 years ago, Lucky Gi was that gi. Lucky Gi was the shoulder roll. It was the original like luxury gi on the market that everyone wanted to have. And I remember like a good chunk of our like head instructors at our gym at the time had that original white and green Lucky Gi, and I just thought it looked so cool. It was so flashy, different than most of the traditional ones that other people wore. So yeah, I've always just kind of, because that was the original first one that kind of stuck out to me when I first started training. I've just always loved them. And since then, Troy Royal has come up, and they're kind of that guy on the market now. But I kind of like sticking with the original Lucky Gi. And it was an American brand too. That was one of the cool things about it. It was one of the first like American jiu-jitsu brands. Scott Nelson, the owner of Lucky Gi, is actually one of the like handful of first American black belts in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu out here. So I think it's just cool to support Americans doing well in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So are all your gis Lucky Gis then?
Every gi I own at this point is now Lucky Gi.
How many is that?
Well,
It gets a little ridiculous,
I'm
doesn't it?
with finding that other Lucky Gi, I would be at 18.
Yeah.
And
You're worse than me. I got 12.
Yeah, and he just told me they just sent me like another package of gis, so that could be
Nice.
like another 2 or 3 gis coming.
Well, shout out to Lucky.
Lucky gi is the shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, pimp them out as much as I can.
Nice.
They're the best.
Nice. Yeah, it becomes like almost like a fetish. Like when the new gi comes out, you're like, I gotta give me some of that.
Yeah.
It's like for me, it's like a gi is like it's like your battle armor. Yeah,
that's exactly what it is. Right.
That's what fucking samurais wore under their real armor, man. That's like what you go into war with.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a spiritual thing. When you put that thing on, you step into the highest version of yourself. You know,
I like that.
you gotta treat it with respect.
Yep. Yeah, if my house were burning down and I had to like
Save the geese
one thing,
first.
it would be the geese. Like I'd get all of them all at once.
Mm-hmm. When we were moving here, we moved here a month ago. I packed all my geese in one box, and I actually labeled it "In case of fire, save the geese first." And my coach took a picture of that, and he shared it on our. We have a team group chat. And he shared it on there, and he's like, "Everybody should show this level of commitment." You know, that's pretty funny.
I mean, the sentimental value
Oh,
on some of the
totally.
gis you had, and the victories and the lessons that you obtained.
And the literal blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no way you can get rid of those. You know, that's a vital piece of sentiment, for sure. So that being said, I still have 2 wrestling singlets from high school. I only wear them when I'm vacuuming. So.
Nice, nice, nice. At least they're not the old school like WWF or Ken Shamrock style.
Booty shorts.
Yeah, exactly. Nice.
Yeah, that's a hard no.
So, what are you guys fascinated by these days? I know, Jeremy, you recently sent me like I forgot the name of the musician, the rapper. You sent me like an entire album where he was talking about like consciousness and metaphysics and things like that. You remember?
Yeah. I had this Owen Square or something like that.
Anyway, like, what are you guys passionate about around this topic? Anything? And you mentioned a lot of books that you're reading, things like that. I'm just trying to like point the audience in a direction, because there are people. I mean, if people are listening to this, and they are, then they're interested in this topic. But a lot of them don't know where else to go to get. You know, how do I explore this thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just research. I mean, yeah, you know, a lot of us do get into these compounds recreationally, and that's okay. I mean, how else are we supposed to view them with how we were raised, and I mean, just the stigmas that surround these things. But you know, that's okay. A lot of people do it. I mean, it's not really recommended per se, but I mean, the biggest thing is just, you know, research. Look into every possibility, because these are serious things. But they're very important. I believe. I mean, personally, to society, just how culture is run. You know, our severance, our lack of proximity to these compounds, I think, creates a lot of the issues that we see today. I mean, there's a lot of things that, you know, could be solved if we would just shut up and go help your neighbor, you know. And some of these compounds will teach you things like that. You know, you can't find a number for how many lessons can be learned through them, but they're very, very powerful. So do all your research that you can. I mean, there's so many good books out there. You got Graham Hancock, you got Dennis McKenna, you got, I mean, Terrence, his brother, but he's got some pretty unique ideas out there. He's a little on the, I want to say, flamboyant side or so, but I mean, if you want to look into it, I mean, even the world of academia is reopening a lot of outlets they have for it. Like Johns Hopkins University, I think just this week started opening up a psilocybin test facility.
Consciousness Research Institute.
It's absolutely. I mean, they have just that school alone. They have it was like 50 peer-reviewed studies and 15 published laboratory results on psilocybin on the mind and what it can do for depression on cancer patients. And I mean, the sky's the limit on it. But if you want to research it, or if you want to contribute to the awareness, that is exactly what you should do. Is just, you know, research yourself, and that way, you know, a lot of people prefer, if you don't call them psychedelics, you're trying to rebrand them and call them entheogens. You know, it's a different name. The word psychedelic kind of has a negative connotation to it, but yeah.
Even though it literally means mind manifesting.
Absolutely.
You know, it has the most beautiful meaning to the word. But you're right, like there's this the stigma and the propaganda that is attached to it with the history.
Oh, for sure. It was the guy who, I can't remember his name, he was a scientist. It was in that book, Psychedelic Explorer, How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan. And it was the scientist that dosed up Aldous Huxley. And they were writing back and forth. And they're trying to come up with a name for these compounds. And it was the scientist that outwrote the writer, Aldous Huxley. You ever read Aldous Huxley? That guy's just...
Oh yeah, Doors of Perception.
Oh yeah. Brave New World.
Fantastic
or Bright New World.
books. Yeah.
What was it called?
Brave New World. I think.
But the scientists, he come up with a saying. They were writing each other back and forth, writing these little poems and whatnot, and trying to figure out a name for these compounds that'll kind of catch. And it was the scientist. He wrote, "To fall to hell or to soar angelic, you'll need a touch or a pinch of psychedelic." And all this is like, that's the name. That's it.
Well, we have DMT naturally occurring in our brain, so you're gonna get it whether you like it or not. So you're gonna be interacting with psychedelics no matter what. I think that's a great piece of advice. Research just deep.
Yeah, and my biggest fear. I mean, I'm not perfect at all, and I consider myself to be a nobody. I love that fact. I love calling myself a nobody. It's relieves a lot of pressure for me. So that being said, though, I don't want to be the nobody who. My biggest fear is to misinform people, and I'm guilty of it, and I make mistakes and stuff. But it's something that you're not going to be able to avoid, really. But that's my biggest concern, is I don't want to misinform somebody, and then, you know, they do something. They take too many mushrooms or too many grams in one sitting, you know, and lose their shit for a good portion of their life, trying to recollect everything. Just do your research, be smart about it, and if somebody asks, if you don't know the answer, look it up, or, you know, at least let them know. I don't know, man.
Yeah. What about you, Jeremy? Any last minute things that you would want to put out there to the people listening, like lessons you've learned or things that you would put out there?
I think just on theme with everything that we've talked about today, I think if any of this type of stuff has any kind of interest to you, then pursue it, because it's worth looking into. It's insightful. Anything that promotes growth, I think, is a good thing. I think that's ultimately what people can get out of experimenting with this stuff, is growth or even evolution, you know, depending on how far back you want to look at it. It's nothing to really be afraid of. You know, I think a lot of people like hold back on this stuff just out of like fear of the unknown, or fear of, you know, whatever they think could happen from it. And, you know, this stuff has been around since we have. There's documentation of people using this stuff since as long as they've been around. It's not going to hurt you to try it. You know, you can do it one time and it could change your life. You might never need to ever do it again, but just doing that one time might change your perspective on life in a good way, and it's fun. Give them the right
Set
circumstances and
settings.
environment. Yeah, set a comfortable setting and dive in.
Yeah, and self-exploration is challenging and it can be scary. There's so much of it that is fun, you know, learning new things about yourself and what you're capable of, you know, learning that you have literal superpowers and can do, you know, crazy things with your mind and with your body if you just put your mind to it. Yeah, it's amazing. I think if I could give any advice to anybody out there to like who's on this path of consciousness or exploration is like have these conversations, right? Talk with other people, and have conversations with people that you admire too, like that aren't even around. Like this gentleman right here, Bruce Lee, right? He was an amazing philosopher on life and things like that. You can still have a conversation with Bruce Lee. Go read his book, you know.
Yeah. Get his perspective.
Right. Have a conversation with his mind too. Help it inform you. So have these conversations with others, and yeah, like you said,
Just spread the word, man. You got to get those different perspectives, and you know, different perspectives are gonna create more awareness within you. And I mean, consciousness, I believe, it's got to be made up out of awareness, or else you wouldn't be aware of it.
The only way that you can experiment with your own consciousness is letting go of your ego. You gotta accept the fact that you don't have control of that ride once you go on it, and you just gotta let it happen. Because if you fight it, that's when you're gonna, you know, have a bad time.
Don't fight it.
So you gotta be ready to go somewhere else and let it happen. Which is, you gotta let your ego go for that to happen.
Mm-hmm. That's the hardest part.
That's
letting go.
rough.
But it's so worth it. Once you do, it feels so welcoming. Like, thank you.
Yeah, that's a hard lesson learned there.
I think that's why martial arts and this stuff kind of go together a lot, because like we talked about initially, you have to be willing to let your ego go to, you know, keep coming back to that place where you're bottom of the totem pole, where you're getting smashed and all that type of stuff. But it's good comes out of that. Anytime you're letting your ego go and putting yourself in positions where you gotta grow, it's only ever good.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Well, thanks, guys. I really appreciate you guys being here today.
Thanks for
We'll have to do
having
it
us.
again.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
I mean, you guys made this whole trip up here today. I really appreciate that. I also do these things through the computer too. So if you guys ever want to record through a Zoom meeting or something too, you guys can do it from home, and we can have more conversations like this too. I learned a ton today. I hope you guys did. I hope you listeners out there learned a lot. Go check out the YouTube page, MindOps YouTube page. This GoPro will be up pretty soon. And yeah, we'll see you guys next time. Keep exploring, keep it safe. All right. Thanks.
Yeah.
It's cool. Well,
Conversations with the Mind podcast is sponsored by mindops.com. You can find us at www.mind-ops.com. We're an eclectic counseling company providing mental health and mental performance services to individuals, small and large groups, teams, businesses, military, through face-to-face sessions or at a distance using phone or confidential video chat apps. We bring a unique Buddhist Western lens and specialize in general psychotherapy for all mental difficulties, sport and performance psychology for performance enhancement, addiction counseling for any maladaptive or destructive habits, and psychedelic integration therapy to make the most from your visionary medicine work. We are available as well for corporate workshops to address the needs of your employees' wellness.